Hi, friends. So I just want to mention One of Them Days, this film that is a comedy that is currently on out in cinemas here in Canada and the US. And it is directed by Lawrence Lamont and it stars Keke Palmer, Sza, and Cat Williams. And the story is about two friends who have to scramble to find rent money after one of their boyfriends kind of just blows through it. And what ensues is just a riot of things that could just whatever you think is going to go wrong ends up going wrong and sometimes even 10 times worse. So it's one of them days. It's an excellent comedic film, sort of like a buddy comedy. That's what people are describing it as. And the reason I'm talking to you about this film is because I want to mention the music in it. Great soundtrack. And I'm going to be speaking with the music supervisor for the film, Sarah Bromberg. She works with Raedio. She's a VP of Music Supervision and Library there. And she's going to talk a little bit about what her work is when it comes to kind of getting the music ready for these kinds of movies. She also works for TV series. So I hope that you enjoy our interview and that you get to go see One of Them Days at a cinema near you. Hi, friends, it's Heidi M. And I'm in the virtual room again. This time I'm actually speaking with Sarah Bromberg. Sarah, so nice to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
So, Sarah, you are the VP of Music Supervision and Library at Raedio. For you, and you work a lot in film and television. And for
Yeah.
people who are not familiar with Raedio, for example, it's a really interesting company. Maybe you can kind of tell us a little bit about your role.
Yeah. So radio is, we like to call it an audio everywhere company. So we cover all forms of audio. We have a record label, a music publishing company, a one-stop library. We do podcasts, we do music events. And radio is part of a bigger company called Hooray, which is Issa Rae's entertainment company.
Mm-hmm.
So we all work under different verticals and umbrellas for the company. And like I said, for us, it's the audio section of the company. I've been at radio for 5 years, and it's an amazing job. I work with absolutely amazing people. I've been doing music supervision for a little over 10 years now.
Right, right.
I worked at a company called Bonfire Collective, and we were acquired by Radio. And so now we sort of operate under doing music supervision under the umbrella of Radio. We
Mm-hmm.
do projects across the spectrum, all types of projects. And then we also do um, productions that are done by Hooray, which is the film and television production company for Issa,
Right.
which is where One of Them Days came from. So any of their projects, we will music supervise, and then we also music supervise projects just out in the world across the board.
Very interesting. And it's sometimes I think we forget as audience members all of the work that goes behind the scenes for all the great soundtracks and scores that we hear in film and our favorite series. So, music supervision, it sounds very general and official. And what does that entail for someone like yourself if you're assigned to a project like One of Them Days?
So we're involved in basically any way that music is integrated into a project. So if you hear a song being played against a scene, we're involved in the creative of pulling that song and pitching that song to editorial and overseeing making sure it's edited to picture right. And then we're also involved in clearing the song and making sure that we can, legally use it in the project. And then we manage all of the budgets when
Right.
it comes to music. And, we didn't necessarily do this in this project, but we also, if music is created, if original music is created for a project, we are involved in creating that music as well. So we'll bring in songwriters, we'll bring in producers, we'll oversee everything they're doing, again, manage the budgets, make sure the creative is right.
Hmm.
Um, and so all the forms of music as it comes to picture we're involved in.
Right.
We're somewhat involved in original score, but a
Hmm.
little bit less so. Like we don't write the original score. we can or cannot be involved in the composer and director relationship.
Right.
And every project is different when it comes to that. Sometimes we're deeply involved in hiring composers and the creative back and forth between, and then sometimes we have absolutely nothing to do with it. And that's just a relationship between the creative and the composer.
Okay,
Um,
that's very interesting. I was going to ask you about
yeah,
that because I do love the composer in one of them days, Chanda,
me too.
whose
She
work
did
is
an
great.
incredible job. I love the score in the movie. Yeah, she's really, really talented.
So you mentioned, okay, so it depends on a project to project basis how involved you are in the music. For films that I guess we're going to talk about films because we're going to get into this film pretty shortly. When it comes to movies and your services are required because the creators have a certain direction that they want to take the film in, whether it's story
Mhm.
or themes, how early does your group like to kind of get involved? Is it, I know that it probably varies as well.
It does vary when we do get involved, but we definitely prefer to be involved as early as possible in the script phases before you're even prepping for production. A
Hmm.
lot of time, music is scripted, and that music can be temporary, placeholder, just an idea or a reference, or it can be very real and something that, wants to stay in the project all the way through to the very end.
Hmm.
Sometimes that music is performed on camera. So anytime music is in the script, which almost 100% of the time it is in one form or another, we like to be involved.
Hmm.
And that was the case with One of Them Days, luckily, because it was an internal production and
Right.
we knew very early on that we were going to be working on it. We were able to be consulting on like really early script drafts that went back literal. I mean, I think the first script I saw for it was 2022.
Hmm.
So yeah, we've been looking at it for a long time, and as early as we can be involved, the better. But sometimes, it just happens, and music is shot on set, and then we're brought in after the afterthought, and we have to sort of clean up pieces and make sure everything is
Hmm.
on the up and up. So it does happen that way. And then sometimes we're brought in like during post after everything is shot, and then they're just laying music in or looking for to build out a creative, sound for the project.
Right. So, given that this was an in-house project, one of them days, which is kind of a luxury,
Hmm.
you knew early on who the stars were going to be, SZA and Keke Palmer, both of who have some um, have their own musical careers as well. What was
Yeah.
the discussion from the beginning in terms of some of the music that they wanted in the film, the creatives wanted in the film? I'm sure the director had an idea, maybe producers had an idea. What's that
Yeah.
discussion?
So the director, Lawrence Lamont, he's amazing. We actually worked together on a previous project. So I sort of had a sense of musical taste from him. And like I said, these conversations started super early. So basically, when we had our first meetings, my questions were, um, you know, what is the musical voice that you're looking for here? What kinds of artists do you want to shine a spotlight on?
Hmm.
Um, are there any specific references that you want to make? And is there any films that that you have in your mind as sort of like maybe
Yes.
the music would be like that?
Hmm.
So those were our very early conversations, and he was building a playlist because again, this project has been in the ether for years. So he's building a playlist for years,
Hmm.
and as we got closer to production, he shared the playlist with me, and we continued our conversations of, okay, are these, thought starters? Or are these songs you really want to place? And
Right.
which from these should I pull to continue pull more creative ideas in from? So yeah, those conversations were going on for literal years. And then of course we also have Issa Rae as a producer, and she's known for her musical tastes. And so, of course, we want to make sure we're presenting something that makes sense for her creative point of view as well. So she is also deeply involved in the music as well. So she wasn't there for our early conversations, but as we got into post and we started actually putting music against picture, she got much more involved. And so we were all bouncing ideas back and forth and pulling music and trying things and seeing what worked and seeing what fell out. The music conversation is very much not stagnant. Like it
Right.
definitely evolves, it changes. You may pull a bunch of songs that you think are going to work and then you put them against picture and it's like actually none of these work. You just don't know until you get the footage what is actually going to work when the cut is coming together. So they very much evolve over time, the conversations.
Yeah, I kind of would have guessed that a little bit because even I guess the editing might kind of change a little bit in the course of the post production as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then, of course, there's always budget has to be a consideration too. So
Mhm.
you can have all the greatest ideas in the world, but you also have to be able to afford them.
So, as much as you may be a music lover yourself, you also have to have this business hat on, this business administrative hat on when you're thinking of these things.
100%.
Um,
Yes. And
Go ahead, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, I think that there is this misconception about music supervision that it's just creative, that you just take a song and put it in and say, Yay, we love it. We're done. What a great song. And
Hmm.
it's so much more than that. And the business part of it is just as important as the creative part of it, because if you can't clear the song, then it doesn't matter if the selection is a good selection because you can't use it in
Hmm.
the film anyway. So it really is an essential part of it.
Yeah, and I would say for the soundtrack in this film, it is so on point. I mean, the film is set in LA, so obviously you have some LA artists, and then you have
Yeah.
the nods, some really classic songs. So, what was that? I think I might have heard an interview where you said some of the older classic songs are not always the easiest ones to get. How do you balance out the mix, especially in this film?
It kind of came together organically, honestly. I mean, we knew we wanted a timeless sound, so we didn't want to just use super, super, super current tracks. We wanted to use tracks that are older as well and have it be a mix. And every place that an older track is placed, it really came together organically. I don't know how else to say it except it
Right,
just
that's
it just bloomed. I don't know how to explain it. It just happened. We didn't go in thinking like, okay, we'll put an old song here and a new song here. It just, like I was saying, it just what the picture wanted. It's what worked for these moments
hmm.
and what made sense. And some of those ideas came from Lawrence, some of them came from me, some of them came from Issa, some of them came from the editors. They come from all different places.
Right.
Um, but it just has to feel right.
Yes.
I don't know how else to say it.
No, and I think that makes sense because I think it translates for us when we're like in the cinema and watching the film and we're like, it's a whole vibe, right?
Yeah,
You're just,
exactly.
it totally
Yeah.
makes sense. And maybe we don't even think about it because we just
Yeah.
kind of go with that
Which is,
feeling.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's almost
Uh,
better if you don't notice it.
exactly. In terms of, having to deal with the clearance of some of these songs, was there ever a challenge? It could be this film or any film that you worked on or project where, there was something that you thought, oh, okay, maybe we're gonna get this one and it just doesn't quite work out. What happens in that sense?
There are many challenges. There are always challenges.
Right.
There are always challenges. And the way that I work and the way that my team works and the way we've always worked is we don't take no for an answer. We don't stop at borders that are set up. We push through, and we keep digging to get to the bottom of the issue.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't always work out. But on this film, luckily, it did work out for every song that we had an issue with, and there were multiple.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we were able to push through to the bottom of it and work with the studio hand in hand, who were super helpful
Right.
in helping us get stuff sorted and accepting the resolutions that we were able to find. So you have to get creative in your resolutions. It's not
Mm-hmm.
always straightforward. Sometimes you do have to think outside of the box on how to approach something, but some of these songs were just so essential and there was just no way that we could remove them or replace them. And so I knew we just had to clear them and just get them done. And so whatever it took, that's what we were going to do. And luckily, like I said, we had good partners at the studio who agreed and saw the resolutions as something that we could work with.
So for a film like this one that is so full of energy and color and music is so essential and you spend so much time with it, how do you kind of make it so that you move on to the next one? Or do you have multiple projects at the same time?
Oh, we have multiple projects at the same time. Yeah. When I was working on this, I was working on like five other projects at the same
Mhm.
time. This was definitely taking priority. This was definitely a very needy baby because it was a very quick schedule. And
Yes.
so it was ripping the band-aid off with this one. It was just like we call it feeding the beast when we're sending tracks because
Right.
sometimes it's just like more, 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 more. So we were feeding the beast on this one quite a lot.
Hmm.
But we do work on multiple projects, and I work on a team of four.
Hmm.
And so I'm really lucky that we are able to support each other across projects. And when can't necessarily give all my attention to two of my projects, somebody else on my team will step up and make sure that they're taken care of.
Hmm.
But the way that music supervisors work generally is to work on more than one project at a time.
Right. That makes sense because you also work with series. So maybe just
Yeah,
a quick note on that, series are much longer in terms of like the time and I guess the requirements for music. Is
yeah.
it the same thing where you are brought on as early as possible and then try to be, I guess,
Yeah,
strict?
ideally. Usually if a series is with a studio, they do bring in a music supervisor early because they recognize that there could be legal issues that come up when it comes to music on set. And so they want to make sure they have somebody who is across that and making sure that nothing is done that can't be used later.
Right.
So they're pretty good about generally with series, pretty good about bringing someone on very early. Not necessarily in the script phases, but in prep for production is usually when they're brought in, when they're hiring a bunch of people, like the costumer and the set designer, and all of those will be part of the hiring when it comes to getting prepped for production. So at that point, we get scripts that do have music in them, and then we sort of dive in and go episode by episode, figuring out what's going to stay. A very similar sort
Hmm.
of thing happens where it changes over time and it blooms and we pull in a lot of music when it comes to a series, we'll deliver a huge library of music because we have to make it across all the episodes of the season.
Right.
And let the editors start working with some initial ideas to see what is working against picture and then go from there.
Okay. And so when you're not deep diving into music in this sense, even on the administrative side, how does music play a role in your life?
I've always loved music. I mean,
Mhm.
you gotta love music to do this job.
Right.
Because it's not an easy job. So it's definitely, you have to have a deep love of music to want to continue in it. And yeah, I just love to listen to it. I love to learn about new music, new artists, new styles of music, new types of music.
Right.
And I'm just always listening, and I always was that way. I think a lot of people are that way.
Hmm.
But, you know, I always felt it, very deeply. I was always sort of known as the music girl, introducing people to bands and
Yes, yes.
sharing mixtapes and making playlists and just constantly in the orbit of music. And I was lucky that this career sort of found me because I didn't know what it was before I found
Mhm.
out about it. Now I think a lot more people know about music supervision,
Sure.
and a lot of people are trying to be music supervisors. But then um, I didn't even know what a music supervisor was. I didn't even know that was a job. I found out about it, and I was like, "Oh, that sounds like a great job. I'd like to do that."
Hmm.
And I'm just lucky to be here today doing it.
For sure. Do you get a chance to speak to, anyone who's aspiring to be in the business or teach or anything along those lines?
Yeah, I actually do teach. I teach at Loyola University Music Business School. I teach music supervision, the only thing I'm qualified to teach. And I do teach a lot of aspiring music supervisors. And then, as music supervisors, we're always being asked to do panels, and
Sure.
there's always different various methods of reaching out as well. To people who are trying to learn the trade or trying to learn more about it. A lot of the people who the kids actually who take my class are actually musicians, and so they're wanting to learn about making music that works well for sync and
Oh,
what kind of
great.
fees should I be looking for, and what does the paperwork mean when I get it. They also need to know the nuts and bolts because it can be scary for a musician or even a manager to receive what we send as a quote request, and if you
Exactly.
don't understand the language you might think like, am I selling my song or do they own it now? Like, what's the right fee I should be looking for? What does all this language mean? So
Right.
I feel like the class is usually like 50% aspiring music supervisors and 50% um, artists or art, aspiring artist managers or, other fields of music, not necessarily music supervision, but also that can utilize knowledge on music supervision.
That's so interesting, and I think it's so essential, right? The business side of things as an artist to be aware
Yeah.
of kind of what to expect.
Yeah. And it's creative and business because I do talk about what kinds of songs make good songs for sync, and there's never any guaranteeing placement no matter what. Like, it always just about the creative at the end of the day, but you can certainly do some things to help yourself get in a better position to land a placement.
That's so great. That's really good tips for anyone who might be
Yeah,
listening, tuning in.
for sure. Yeah.
And I always say that if you are at events and there are panels, it's always a good thing to kind of just drop by. You never know what nuggets people are going to drop and kind of stay with you in your career.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, Sarah, what's on your I guess what's on your slate next? I know. So one of them days is doing really great. I just want to keep saying that it's a movie that everybody should watch.
It's so good. I also want to say that too, because more than anything, am a fan of this movie. I can quote every line. I never get sick of seeing it. I never get tired of seeing it. I never stop laughing. I'm I love this movie. Like, I truly, it's so funny. SZA and Kiki are absolute magic on screen, and the
Yeah,
supporting cast is so good. Everybody in their own scene is just so funny. Like, I really, really do believe in this movie so, so much. I'm so excited to be a part of it. So yes, one of them days, still out in theaters.
chill out.
Go see it in theaters. It's worth it. And I'll say this, it's worth it to see in theaters because it's fun to laugh with people. Like,
Absolutely,
it
absolutely.
encourages more laughing. It makes, you notice things that are funny that you might not have noticed if you were just watching at home. So yeah, I definitely encourage people to see it in the movies. I also have I have four other projects that are in various
Hmm.
stages. Survival of the Thickest, the second season on Netflix, which is a 30-minute scripted comedy starring Michelle Buteau based on her book. It's very good. It's very relatable, just about a 38-year-old living in New York. She goes through a breakup, and then, a series of hysterical events ensue. She's amazing. She is so, so funny. The second season is coming out March 27th.
Hmm.
So really, really excited for the world to see that one too. That's another one of my favorite projects. Um, I have another show coming out in March on Peacock called Long Bright River,
Hmm.
um, which stars Amanda Seyfried, and it's a murder mystery. So sharp, hard right turn, very
Yeah,
different
very.
content. Yeah. She's incredible in it. The story has so many twists and turns that I was literally screaming as I read the scripts. Like, I dropped the computer at one point. It was just so crazy, the twists and turns. It's a really, really cool story. It's based on the book of best-selling book of the same name, Long Bright River.
Hmm.
So that will also be out in March. And then I'm working on the third season of P Valley, which is on Stars. which has a huge fan base, and people know it and love it. And we've been working on this third season for what feels like 100 years. And it's a really, really, really exciting season. We are making so much music. We have like 30 original songs this season, which is
Oh, wow.
absolutely insane.
Yes.
But it's really, really good music. I'm super, super proud. So that one is,
Mm-hmm.
a lot. And I have another show that's just finishing for Netflix as well called The Core. And that's starring Miles Heiser. And it's based on the memoir, The Pink Marine, which was about this guy, Greg Cope, who enlisted in the Marines as an 18-year-old kid who was gay when it was illegal to be gay in the military. So it's a coming of age story. It takes place in 1990, which is a great year for music. Super fun music in that
Definitely.
one.
Mhm.
Loved working on the music for this one. And we're just finishing that. No idea when it comes out. Sometime in 2025. We'll
Right.
be done making it in May. So sometime after May. I have no idea when. Netflix
Probably
doesn't tell
later in
you.
the fall or around
Yeah.
there. Okay,
Yeah.
excellent. That's a lot of work, Sarah.
I know.
No, that's
I'm
great.
tired.
That's great. But I mean, you're
But
so
yeah.
enthusiastic about each of them. Like, how could you not?
Yeah, no, I love it. I mean, listen, I love the job. Like I said, you couldn't do it if you didn't love it because
For
it's not an
sure.
easy job. But yeah, I'm super excited about all those projects.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time. I know you're busy, so
Thank
I
you.
really
I
appreciate
appreciate
it.
it.
Great
Yeah, this was a great
conversation. Thank
interview.
you.
Okay. Take care.
You too.